Kennedy versus Braidwood. You probably haven't heard of it, but this Supreme Court case could drastically change your healthcare by blocking free preventative tests for things like cancer, depression, HPV, HIV, and more. The ACA requires most health plans to cover screenings recommended by the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, but the provision is being challenged. We are pleased to be joined today by Michael Sapienza, the Chief Executive Officer of the Colorectal Cancer Alliance and advisory board member at Georgetown's Ruesch Center for the Cure of GI Cancer. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Andy. Happy to be here.
So Michael's here to help us understand what's at stake in the Kennedy versus Braidwood Supreme Court case. Most people probably haven't even heard of the case, but for many people, they feel it's going to be the most impactful case in this Supreme Court session. So I was wondering if we could just start off, Michael, if you could tell us, if you can explain why the case is important and why people should be caring about this case.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. I think the biggest thing is that 150 million Americans, and that actually is including 37 million children, rely on preventative services, free preventative services that are provided through the Affordable Care Act. And this case is putting those people's preventative services, especially no-cost preventative services, at risk. So that's a lot.
That is a real lot, and it really is something people should be making sure they understand what's going on here. So can you explain a little bit about what this preventative service requirement is? What kind of service are included? What's in there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's everything from, cancer screenings to HPV screenings to fall prevention to, HIV screenings to COVID, even some COVID pieces. There's also things for infants. So there's just a whole array of services that are included in the what we call the United States Preventive Services Task Force recommendations.
Okay, and is this Supreme Court, is it like a thumbs up, thumbs down for all of it? Or is it like maybe they'll say some stuff is okay and other stuff is okay? Give us a little sense of like what the case is about.
Yeah, so basically it would revert back to pre-ACA recommendations. So, since 2010, a lot of things have changed, whether we're talking about cancer screenings or heart disease screenings or hypertension screenings. And so if the if the Supreme Court rules that this appointment clause, meaning that the Preventive Services Task Force can't recommend free screenings, either A or B recommended, then certain things would be like not free at all. Some things would revert back to recommendations prior to 2010. Mm-hmm. And it would set a really dangerous precedent because then other types of free or no cost healthcare services could then be at risk in the future. Right now, it's just, this case is really just about the United States Preventive Services Task Force, which is still huge, but there are other places where free preventative services are provided. And so, again, let's just take colorectal cancer. So, in 2021, the United States Preventive Services Task Force lowered the screening age from 50 to 45. So I'll just tell the listeners, colorectal cancer is the number one cause of cancer-related deaths in men under 50. So there's a big reason why they lowered that screening age to 45. So if, in fact, this Supreme Court case goes to where they rule that the appointments clause, the Preventive Services Task Force tie to no-cost screenings is unconstitutional, then nothing that was decided by the Preventive Services Task Force after 2010 would be free, meaning anybody getting screened from 45 to 50 or to 49 really would be covered. And that's catastrophic. I'll just say it's really bad. And 82% of the people in this country believe in no-cost preventative services.
Right, I totally get you there. So if you could just help a little bit explain exactly what's going on with the case. You were talking about the Preventive Services Task Force, and what exactly is the issue being debated in the case about the way that they're nominated?
Yeah, absolutely. So the appointments clause on the Constitution says that the president or a chief executive of the executive branch can appoint somebody, and they have to be then confirmed by the Senate, right? And in this case, the members of the United States Preventive Services Task Force are actual volunteers.
Right,
Um, and so what this case is saying is that actually does not support the appointments clause of the Constitution. And
right,
and they may be right, they may be wrong. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. But the unfortunate part of it is that in 2010, when the
yeah,
Affordable Care Act was passed, it tied the amazing, let me just say, the amazing scientists, the amazing academic folks that are a part of the Preventative Services Task Force and their great work of making recommendations, that affect, again, I'll say it again, 150 million Americans plus 37 million children and their health. They tied that to A and B. If the Preventative Services Task Force, these awesome, smart people, rated these things A or B, it would be covered for free. Okay, covered for free. And so again, it would be catastrophic. And there's 66 services, just so you know, that are covered under this as no cost mandate.
right. So let me bounce off to you what is in my mind and what I'm wondering about in this case, which is my understanding is the question is the plaintiffs are arguing that they want to prevent the political influence on the decision making of the committee, and for that reason, they're arguing that they should be appointed by Congress so that there's an open hearing. The alternative is that the Secretary of HHS is the one who has the ability to make the decisions. So, in this particular case, uh, if the case goes through, right, and it's left as is, in fact, the results are that the system will be such that political influence potentially could be greater, could remain, in that the Secretary of Health and Human Services can change the members of that task force, and he could stack the deck against and in effect get the changes that they wanted. What I found interesting, particularly in this case, is the Trump administration, the first administration, right, was opposed to. They were on the plaintiff side,
Right.
but they've switched over to the other side. I'm curious if any of that worries you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and I'm not going to weigh into the political part, just so you know, Andy, because I think that everybody in this country, whether you are Republican, Democrat, or independent or other, believes that preventative services, or at least most of them, let's just say that, should be free, or at least should be provided to individuals as members of our society, as citizens. And so I was really, and the Alliance was really happy to see that the Trump administration was going to be arguing, against ruling that this is unconstitutional, right? Because that's a really good sign from both the president himself plus HHS Secretary RFK Jr. that they also believe in these preventative services. I have
Right,
seen quotes from members of the administration that say, we've got to make sure that there isn't DEI hires in here, and there aren't this and that, and these people need to be qualified, et cetera. And that, I would just say, is I've known many members of the United States Preventative Services Task Force in the
right,
last 15 years,
right,
and every single one of them are hardworking, smart, top of their field people that understand what is best for the American people, and they're these preventative services. I've never ever seen one instance of any political interference. It is the top-notch scientists, doctors, et cetera, from every field across the country. The thing I would say is that the United States Preventative Services Task Force has historically been very slow and not because it's their fault, but because of the funding. They're,
Right.
they're only funded, I think it's about 11 or $12 million.
Right.
And
Right.
they're in charge of deciding 66 preventative services that
Yeah.
affect the health of all these people. And so
Right.
if
Right.
I were to say anything of what we should really be talking about, and not this, what I think is a ridiculous Supreme Court case, right? We should be talking about how do we fund the Preventive Services Task Force in a way that we can speed up them looking at recommendations for Americans to make them healthy. So that would be the thing I would just say from a political perspective is they need more funding to be able to do this faster.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's a great point. And I think it's also really interesting to see. I mean, how many issues these days can you find where the Trump and the Biden administration actually are agreeing on a position? So that definitely is a little bit of hope for the outcome of this particular case. So yeah, no, it's great to hear from you. We appreciate you taking the time. Certainly is an important case, and we appreciate you taking the time to help us understand a little bit better what it's all about.
Absolutely, Andy. My pleasure.